My name is Bob Liff, and this is the CUNY Forum, a monthly town meeting that brings prominent New Yorkers together with faculty and students of the Edward T. Rogowski Internship Program in Government and Public Affairs. When Bill de Blasio dedicated his mayoralty to tackling the widening gap of inequality in this city, the centerpiece was his commitment to create and preserve 200,000 units of housing affordable to poor and working families who are being priced out of their gentrifying neighborhoods and, to some degree, the city itself. It has echoes of the late Mayor Ed Koch's commitment in the 1980s to create 160,000 units of affordable housing for a city that was emerging from the greatest fiscal crisis it had ever experienced, one where construction had virtually stopped. But Koch had one advantage that de Blasio does not have. The fiscal crisis was marked by a disinvestment that included an arson epidemic that left huge swaths of the city vacant. That means the land, which the city had taken for non-payment of real estate taxes, was free. De Blasio has no such advantage, and has devised a multifaceted program that required he make a deal with the devil, as many of his allies view the real estate industry, requiring that developers set aside 25% of new rental apartments as affordable. But his progressive allies have become critics, asking affordable for whom? Setting the affordability level at 60% of AMI, which is the area median income, which is actually a measure of income for the broader metropolitan area, not just the neighborhoods affected, makes those apartments out of reach for many current residents whose incomes are lower. Are the critics right, or are they making the perfect the enemy of the good? At the same time, one of the tax incentives designed to encourage developers of rental property to include affordable units, called 421A, has expired, and negotiations in Albany over its renewal have stalled over whether to require that the projects be built with union labor, which is far more expensive than allowing a general contractor to subcontract the union or non-union trades, depending on the best deal he or she can sign. The failure to reach a new deal already shows up in deep declines in applications for new affordable residential construction, as developers claim they cannot carry too many affordable units profitably without the tax abatements that went with the 421A program. Then there is the New York City Housing Authority, which manages 200,000 units of affordable housing for 600,000 residents, and where I grew up in Linden Houses in East New York. With shortfalls in federal and state aid, and far too many of these developments are falling into disarray, and proposals to build combo market rate and affordable units on underutilized lands within the developments has met with loud protest that the city is threatening to gentrify some of the last vestiges of dedicated affordability. We're joined by four New Yorkers who take part in the debate over keeping New York affordable. Richie Torres is a city council member from the Bronx who chairs the Committee on Public Housing. Felice Machete is the general manager of Grenadier Realty, which operates Brooklyn Starrett City, and was deputy city housing commissioner under Mayor Koch and commissioner under Mayor Dinkins. Meredith Marshall is managing partner in BRP Companies, which is a developer of affordable housing around the city, and John Krinsky is a professor of political science at City College. Councilman, let me start with you. Today, on the day that this is being taped, the City Planning Commission adopted the first rezoning connected with the mayor's plan for inclusionary housing in East New York. It's a very controversial program. Are you surprised it was approved? Are you prepared to embrace it or not?
Well, no surprises, because the City Planning Commission is primarily mayoral appointees, so no surprise that they would approve a mayoral plan. But I think the resistance we've seen in East New York illustrates
it mirrors what happens elsewhere as well.
Right. And even though the purpose of mandatory inclusionary housing is to alleviate gentrification, the perception among residents in East New York and elsewhere in the city is that it will actually cause it. And so there's been fundamental...
Because the incomes are lower than the income that's being set.
So what is defined as low income is 60% of AMI, which is about $50,000 a year, and $50,000 is double the median income in East New York. And so there are many people who believe that there's no space in the mayor's plan for them. The reality is more complicated. It's not as if the mayor's willfully denying the poorest New Yorkers housing. He's constrained by the economics of affordable housing, and he's also constrained by the law. There are only so many requirements that we can impose without violating a federal law, the Takings Clause to the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. So,
Meredith, you have studied a lot, and as you prepare to build affordable housing, you and I have worked together in the Crossings, a construction project you're undertaking in Jamaica, which includes a lot of affordable housing.
Yes.
this question of what's affordable to whom is an incomplete argument, you think?
Yes. I think it's incomplete because if you look at the census tracts in East New York, and we have about 800 units in construction in East New York, you have, I think, $33,000 is the median income. But a lot of the lower income, if you look at the quartiles there are four, right? The bottom quartile is a lot of NYCHA residents. And some make $8,000, $10,000 a year. But if you take them out of the equation, right? You take them out of the equation, then that will rise because the median means half above, half below, right? So it's very difficult. I'm a developer. You called me the devil earlier. I don't think I'm really the devil.
I don't think you're the developer.
But I build some market rate. I build a lot of mixed income, a lot of low income affordable. And what you find is, we have a dearth of housing on all levels, right? And if you build to 30% of AMI, if you look at the MIH, the plan is average at 60, some averages at 80, right? The 421A has some averages at, I think, 130 of AMI, only if the councilman approved that or suggested that. But if you build a 30% of AMI, you have to permanently subsidize on an operating basis those units because 30% of AMI is about $20,000, which we have some units in Bed-Stuy. A 2 or 3 bedroom is $400 or $500 a month, right? And the operating cost of a unit is over $600 a month. If you correct me if I'm wrong, Felice, because you manage more units than we do. So how do you build that? You can subsidize that. If you told me I could own that building for no mortgage, I couldn't afford to rent those units at $300. I would lose money every month. So there has to be a permanent fix, unless you have vouchers, which we don't have. Right. How do you do that? So I think there's an education that's needed, and then you get around a table and you look at the numbers, and it's just math. And these, good folks can do better math than we can, but it's math, and the math doesn't add up at 30% of AMI unless you provide ongoing subsidies.
Felice, you've been in these wars for a long time, going back to the Koch administration and the 160,000 units that he committed. When you look at this,
It was 252.
252. I'm sorry, I forgot.
160 was the original number, and then it was revised to 252.
Take me, when you look, how does that relate to what's going on now?
Well, there's similarities and there are differences. Differences from a physical point of view. You mentioned before that at the time of the 10-year plan, the city owned 100,000 units of housing. 60,000 were vacant in-rem buildings, and another 40
in-rem meaning taken
for the city by the city for non-payment of taxes. Right. So the city
that was basically landlords walking away from their buildings.
Correct, failure to pay taxes, and so 60,000 were vacant in vacant buildings, vacant units, vacant buildings. Another 40,000 were in occupied buildings that the city owned and managed. So the city was the manager of 40,000 units of housing with very, very low-income people. So that's the first thing. In addition, at that time, because of demolition, because of fires and other things, there was significantly more land resources. So the city, not only did it own 100,000 units, but the city had a substantial inventory of land that was available to it for redevelopment. So that's the first issue from a physical point of view. From a political or policy point of view, it's very interesting because the arguments are very much the same. Mm-hmm. At the time of the 10-year plan, the 10-year plan was constructed a little bit differently than the de Blasio plan. The 10-year plan first started with a commitment by the Koch administration of the funding, the $5.1 billion, which was not federal, and it was a variety of city funds from different sources, primarily the capital budget, but other sources as well, like revenue from Battery Park City. The first issue was we knew what was available from a subsidy point of view. The next issue is, well, what needs, will those dollars serve? And so the next thing was to look at various needs, in terms of incomes. And so what the decision was at that time was 87% of the 10-year plan, the funds for the 10-year plan, went to low and moderate income people. Okay, I'll tell you what it was at the time. So 60% low, families earning less than $19,000, and the balance on that side, on the 87, was for moderate, which is under 32,000 and below.
That was at that time.
And right, and middle at that time was 32 to 50, and the way that the resources were targeted was various programs: gut rehab, vacant buildings, new construction, vacant lots, preservation, of occupied buildings, both city buildings, owned buildings, and private buildings. When you then took the funds that were available, the income targeting, the stock, in terms of what kind of program you were going to designate, you could come up with the number of 252.
So now you come ahead to what de Blasio faces.
Well, I think, on the de Blasio side, obviously they don't have the inventory that was available. The issue is, of course, land values have risen everywhere. So you have very, very high land values. You have high acquisition values in terms of buying apartment buildings. At the time of the Koch plan, if it was a privately owned building, acquisitions at that point, if you wanted to purchase a privately owned building, those apartments were between $3,000 and $5,000 a unit. Today, the sky's the limit. There's some preservation deals where people buy units at $120,000 or $130,000. So that's the first thing, that the cost of developing the housing, whether it's land or whether it's buildings, is a far different cost than it was back then. But as I said before, there are a lot of similarities. When we came out with the plan and 87% were low and moderate, there were a number of low-income groups, low-income advocate groups, that felt that the concentration wasn't sufficient in terms of the low-income category, even though at that time it was 60%. So the reason being, which is what the council member said before, the need for housing is across the board. And within every income group, that income group, whether it's low, moderate, or middle, believes that they need affordable housing. And so you've got, groups. In each one of those groups, people still think that housing is not enough for them. And that's still the same issue today.
John, you study this. You've looked at it. You looked at what grew out of the Koch and Dinkins housing programs, which is a large nonprofit housing sector.
Right. I think that one of the things, another difference is that a great deal of the programs under what was called, or still is called, I guess, the Division of Alternative Management Programs, which was the unit in the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, or HPD, that was steering a lot of these preservation properties, especially into preservation programs, so that they were working with community-based organizations that had often been the tenant advocates who were fighting the landlords who were walking away from their buildings. And so you actually had the growth of an infrastructure, a community-based infrastructure of nonprofit housing developers, some of which are still going strong, many of which are still going strong, but some of whom really are not going strong or don't exist anymore. And part of that story is that during the Giuliani administration and then during the Bloomberg administration, we really shifted gears significantly in terms of the hows and the whos who are involved. The Giuliani administration was profoundly uninterested, really, in housing preservation. And the Bloomberg administration did some housing preservation in their vaunted 165,000 units of affordable housing. But again, in a neighborhood like East Harlem, where I've done some work with a coalition called the New York City Community Land Initiative, was partly started by a group called Picture the Homeless and the New Economy Project and a whole bunch of other groups now, 17 in fact. 94% of the affordable units, and this gets back to this area median income and versus neighborhood median income issue, 94% of the units developed under the Bloomberg administration were unaffordable to households at the median income now of the neighborhood. So even if you say that there's a whole lot of public housing in East Harlem, even if you take out the public housing residents, there's still no way on earth you're getting to even half those units being affordable to the median incomes in the neighborhood. And that's one of the problems, and that's why people are upset. The other thing and the other part of the story is that under Giuliani, the city stopped taking buildings and property into tax foreclosure. And instead what it did is it decided to sell those tell the tax debt, so the tax liens. A lien is, when I'm talking to a broader audience, you want to say what a lien is. It's the tie to the property that's activated by the debt. And so it sold it into what's really a secondary market in liens. in tax liens. So the city actually gave up the leverage that it had. So it's not just this sort of innocent thing that we don't have the property anymore. It was under Giuliani, we gave up whatever leverage we had in order to get the tax revenue back. Now, if you think about it in terms of money, it's a good deal of money. But when you look at it from the other angle and say, we're now spending $1 billion in the homeless services system, $1 billion a year in the homeless services system, and the people who are going into the system are coming from several neighborhoods, not the whole city, and not the whole city evenly, but several neighborhoods, where the biggest correlate for families entering the homeless shelter system are tax liens on buildings.
You know, it's
a problem.
New York One and Baruch College do a poll of the city, and they had their poll that came out this week. They asked questions about affordable housing, and 65% of the people felt it was likely or very likely, and it was across every demographic: education, income, borough, race, that they could be priced out of the neighborhood where they're living, including 53% of the people making over $100,000 a year. And another relevant question they asked, what was the biggest cause of homelessness? More people said the lack of affordable housing, which was, followed by unemployment, mental illness, substance abuse. But the largest, that feeds the gentrification fear, which you've seen very profoundly in this proposal to kind of infill, on the infill construction in NYCHA housing.
Well, yes. NYCHA's looking to develop on public housing land in an emotionally charged atmosphere. I mean, the fear of displacement is what's driving the opposition to both infill and the mayor's housing plan. But keep in mind that the greatest threat confronting public housing is not gentrification, because public housing by definition is ungentrifiable. The greatest threat is demolition by neglect, is that if we defer maintenance and neglect these buildings long enough, they will become unlivable. NYCHA's been plagued by decades of disinvestment. It has $17 billion worth of capital needs, and yet only receives $250 million from the federal government to address those needs. So the gap between the need and the funding that NYCHA receives is unsustainable, and you cannot sustain it without a sustainable revenue stream, which is what land lease would provide. I think of land lease as a means of redistributing wealth. You're capturing wealth in a hot real estate market, and you're reinvesting it in preserving public housing. And I believe that's a laudable goal.
Good.
Yeah, I want to go back to the affordability issue with the AMIs. So 60% of AMI is sort of a product of the Reagan tax code changes in 1986, and they created the low-income tax credit. Low-income tax credit, you get generous benefits for building units at 60% of AMI. That is the program. So that's what people build to. There is no tax program for 30% or 20% of AMI. So that's the difference. We have 30-year-old programs. For these kids, it's probably before they were born, right? For these students, rather, I'm sorry. Before they were born, and I was in college at that time, you have 30, you have this system that is 30 years old and is sort of antiquated. So we have to develop new models to address that, the people who make 30% of AMI or $30,000, $40,000 a year in these communities, East Harlem, West Harlem, the Bronx, East Flatbush, where I grew up, we don't have the program. So one would argue if you build to that sort of economic strata, you have to provide operating subsidies, right?
But yet you were able to, in Jamaica, when you originally were going to build, working with the Greater Jamaica Development Corporation, which is somebody that I work with in my real life, you were originally going to do that as a 25% affordable within the development.
Yes.
But then the de Blasio administration came to you and wanted to increase that affordability. What happened?
It's an interesting thing. So we like to satisfy, requests. So
well, you guys are also
the RFP, the community development, and the Greater Jamaica community, they wanted 20 or 25% low income. The administration wanted 33%. So we had to convince, this is sort of an odd argument, you have to convince the community to accept more low income, because they said we have this sort of profile as being a low income community. We want more middle income. We want more moderate income we want a mix, and we thought 25. So we convinced them to go, 33, 33, 33, 33 low, 33 middle, 33 moderate, percentage moderate to get to 100%, and the community bought it. But we're subsidizing the low income with the middle income, and the project has sufficient subsidy to do so. But you couldn't build in Jamaica with that model because you're limited with subsidy. So to be sustainable, the math has to work on an ongoing basis. And again, I get back to that.
Yeah, but that's all true, and I agree with that. But the issue is really an issue of money, right? Because you can build to any income limit if you're willing, as a government, if you're willing to pay for it. There are two ways to pay for it. You can either subsidize operating expenses, and when the city had the availability of more Section 8 and more Section 8 vouchers.
Section 8 is a rental subsidy
Correct.
program that's been cut back dramatically.
And so therefore you could reach a lower income family and not sacrifice the income that went to the property for operating expenses. Correct. So to some extent, during the Koch administration, we did have the benefit of more freestanding vouchers than the city currently has. But the issue is a money issue. You could, if the administration were willing, I have a model that we did, and I actually currently manage on the Lower East Side, called Two Bridges. And Two Bridges has 4 income levels. It has 20% homeless, 20% low, 35% moderate, and whatever the balance, 25% middle. And so it's structured so that, as in your project...
Are all of the apartments subsidized?
Well, the way it works is the building itself is subsidized. And so you work backwards from what incomes you want to reach based on the rent they're willing to pay. And then you look at all of those rents in a building and say, based on this, these are my operating expenses, taxes generally are abated, these are my, other expenses, my mortgage, my debt, what do I need in terms of a subsidy level in order to achieve that? And so that's really the issue. The issue is the level of subsidy that any administration is willing to commit. I just wanted to make a point before about the discussion about the Giuliani administration. The Giuliani administration really focused, to the extent they focused at all, on housing, and he ran, actually, was his political policy, his policy statement on housing was middle income. Okay, so as a candidate, he endorsed middle income. He didn't endorse the need for low income. And then when Bloomberg came, I think in my personal opinion, they pretty much carried that forward in terms of the focus on middle. What it did was it squeezed out, based on the fact that they stopped production, it squeezed out the people at the low end. And then, with all due respect, there was at one point within that continuum, the city council voted for vacancy decontrol of stabilized units, which put pressure on the rent, so rents became higher, and therefore low-income people had less access to those units because the rents were now higher because of decontrol. So they weren't building any units or replacing them. They were losing them as a result of rent stabilization. And I think the thing that's unique between then and now is that now in the homeless shelters, we have single-parent heads of households earning $30,000 to $40,000 a year living in a shelter.
Working poor.
Yes,
homeless.
living in a homeless shelter because of the inability to access affordable housing. And so then the question becomes, well, do you separate your homeless programs and initiatives from your housing programs and initiatives? Because obviously, the point is, if you can't put those units out, you're still going to end up with 60,000 people in the shelters because there's pressure on every side, even on the stock that's available to them. Right. So that's also part of the problem.
But I think, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I have to.
Please.
I think you're hitting the nail. I think the question we should ask ourselves is, like, the city council and the mayor, we're facing more challenges with fewer resources from the federal government. And so how can we address a historically unprecedented affordability crisis at a time of declining federal investment in both housing and infrastructure? For me, if we want to reach the deepest levels of affordability, we would need a dramatic expansion of the Section 8 program.
But
that's how you
right? But there is but that's
effectively a moratorium,
which is effectively not going to happen so long as you
even
have a Republican control of Congress.
And even the mayor's own housing plan acknowledges its own limitations. So it indicates
But the fact that it acknowledges its own limitations raises the question of whether the critics of the plan, who are allies of the mayor. I mean, these are all progressive people. This is not the Giuliani administration. These are all people on the same side of the political divide. Are people, and even you understand the constraints that the mayor faces, the math constraints, if you will. Are you making the perfect the enemy of the good? Part of your job is to push him as far as you can. But if you step back, are you making the perfect the enemy of the good?
At some level, I do believe that. I do believe that some of the criticism is inattentive to the financial constraints and the legal constraints. And the mayor is making a Herculean effort to address the affordability crisis. And the outrage should be directed toward the federal government, which has been disinvesting from public housing and from Section 8, which is the largest provider of affordable housing for the poorest New Yorkers in our city. I mean, those are the two programs that prevent catastrophic homelessness.
Except, can I just,
sure.
I mean, I want to be careful about saying that the progressive advocates and council members are making the perfect the enemy of the good. For two reasons. One is that I think that the housing plan as it is now is a marginal improvement over what Bloomberg did. But it's not huge. If you look at what the numbers of what the de Blasio plan, of the income levels and the depth of affordability that the de Blasio plan meets, and put it side by side with Bloomberg's, it's better, but it's not that much better. And I think that we have to be careful about making the marginally better the enemy of the quite a bit better. And here's where I think that it matters. There's a few pieces of math that I think we just have to start thinking creatively about. One is that you have groups that have nonprofit groups that have done. First of all, they're not taking profit out of it, and that helps. And it may not seem like a lot of profit, but
one could argue if that's a sufficient way to do this.
But there are nonprofit groups around the city that have been doing this very well for 20, 30 years. They run their housing well, and they do so for lots of people, and the same sort of thing that you described, where the affordability targets are much deeper than what we're talking about now. And then again, I just want to get back to this idea that we're, in the cluster site shelter program, we are spending up to $3,600 a month to house homeless families.
But why is that?
Because we're not thinking very creatively.
Let me tell you why.
Well, I think he's right, though.
But let me tell you why. There's a structural problem. We had the the Department of, I think, Homeless Services Commissioner, and I'm on the board, and we asked the question. I think it was 50,000 homeless at the time. And they said they spend $1 billion a year. And we did the math, and we said, so the families that you mentioned who make $30,000, some families make less, how much would it cost for us to, on average, to put these people back in their home? What did they leave their home for? It was an amazing number. It's less than $1,000. So basically, if you do the math, we're solving a $500 million problem with $1 billion. Why? Disparate sources. We have city, state, and federal government. And federal government does not believe in solving this on a permanent basis. They provide temporary annual money for temporary solutions, meaning shelters. So the sources dictate how we spend the money. We could spend half the money and house everyone, right? I would take that if someone could afford $600. If you gave me $1,000, I'll provide a 2-bedroom for them. We have the money. We just have sort of inefficient systems.
The rules. And
it takes people to get around the table and fix the system. The issue is in America, though, America doesn't have an affordability housing problem. We have too many houses in the wrong places. You can go to Florida and other places, you have beautiful homes that no one bought, right? New York City is an island, and everyone wants to live here. So we have an artificial housing issue. Artificial, right? I grew up in East Flatbush. You have low zoning and no train system. So today you get wet in the rain. You have to take a $1 cab that's probably illegal. To get to a subway station, to get to Manhattan, takes you an hour and a half. My family home, my sister lives there, hasn't increased in value. a mile away from that, when we went to high school in Brooklyn Tech, we owned a place, I can tell you, it's up 20 times because it's close to transportation. Canarsie, the same thing. Large swaths of New York City hasn't had appreciable increase in rents.
But isn't that
in value? It's because
I'm
of
sorry.
public transportation. If you look at the increases in Brooklyn, it's the westward movement of yuppies and buppies, right, from the west to the east, along the train lines.
Along the L train in particular.
L, the A,
But,
whatever.
You know,
two of the three.
Because it's a very important point. The neighborhoods it's 12 neighborhoods that the mayor has identified in the
Right.
that are to be rezoned. The first one being East New York, are linked to transit. I mean, he's looking for outlying neighborhoods or more outlying neighborhoods that have existing infrastructure, where land right now is much less expensive than in the Long Island cities, the Williamsburgs. Even now, Bushwick is getting more expensive. You know, parts of the South Bronx have been. You know, you've seen the beginnings of gentrification. Well, you've seen the beginnings.
Well, even on the concourse.
And on
You're right.
Yeah.
But Bob, I contend though, and some of your colleagues, we need a sort of an education session because, you know, before I got into development, I had two different careers, and you know, someone went to the building and said, "Oh, why are they building in our neighborhood? We don't need these tall buildings, but you want more affordability, but you don't want the density, right? And if you want one or the other, you said, well, we have to build a union, so it makes it more expensive.
Right,
so those are conflicting
But isn't
goals.
the mayor precisely, you know, one of the deals he had to make with himself coming out of a city council career and protecting his community is we will allow you to build higher. We will allow you to build denser. If you will give us more units.
No, they don't want density. Because they think that's a bad thing.
I think communities. I think communities don't want density if they don't feel as if the density is going to serve them.
They
I
don't.
think that
It's a knee-jerk reaction.
They
They don't
so.
want density. But I contend that if you accelerate gentrification, but not building, it's supply and demand. Any economics majors here? It's a supply and demand. We're losing 12,000 units from stabilization a year. And the mayor's plan has 8,000 that you can build, only because he's constrained. I support the mayor 100%, MIH, ZQA, and all of his plans. But if you look at it, you know, if I won't say that, but I've had to do it theoretically, I would more density because you have to create the supply to offset prices. Because if you built, if we had a 300,000 unit plan of all new housing, no preservation, you would sort of cap the speculation because folks would say, wait a minute, I may buy this land, I may buy this building, but somebody's building a new unit and I can't compete with that unit. So the issue is supply. We have a supply issue in this city.
Dispute lands on your lap. This kind of community density versus affordability.
The resistance to density varies widely, so there's no, I don't want to describe the opposition as monolithic. I mean, look, to some communities, density is an epithet, right? It's associated with displacement because that has been their historical experience. I want to take issue with one thing the professor said, if I understood correctly. I do believe the mayor's plan is more than a marginal improvement upon the status quo, because the best tool that we have for creating permanently affordable housing is the zoning code. And so under MIH, you know, before you could have a rezoning
mandatory
without creating a single unit of affordable housing. You know, now in a rezoned neighborhood, once we put MIH in place, you will be required to build affordable housing. We're creating an anchor of affordable housing that can survive gentrification. I mean, the operating assumption of the mayor's plan is that gentrification will sweep more and more neighborhoods, and so MIH will guarantee that at least a percentage of the units will remain affordable.
Just one. I
think that's a substantial improvement,
yeah,
not a marginal.
unless it's not affordable to the people who are there.
No. But I agree with that.
But if the people are there,
I think we should measure the mayor's
hang on.
plan against, not against the ideal, but against is he making the best possible use of the scarce resources of a municipality? And I think given declining investment from the federal government, the mayor's making a truly valiant effort. So.
I mean, I agree with you. There are certain communities where development is going to occur or continue to occur, and without the mandatory, you're just going to get market rate, and you won't have.
That's worse than the status.
Yeah. And we know where those communities are, and they continue to expand, right? I think the issue of the mandatory in neighborhoods that haven't yet begun really begun the gentrification process. And really, East New York has not really begun the gentrification process. I spend a great deal of time.
But it might eventually.
Of time there. It may eventually. Listen.
It can go the other way.
In the long run, you know, John Maynard-Keynes, in the long run, we're all dead, right? I mean,
Well, that's what happened in the 70s and 80s. You had disinvestment. Harlem has 60% vacancy.
Is there a neighborhood that's degentrified in the last 15 years?
Well, I mean,
no, but
No, because you have these, you know.
Yeah.
But I think I think though, for people to be concerned in those neighborhoods is a natural concern because they view what's happened in Bushwick, they view what's happened in Williamsburg, and that it's a natural fear that says it's creeping. You know, it used to be in the old days, it was abandonment that was creeping up. Now it's people's fears, not of abandonment, but gentrification is creeping up.
Who's fearing the gentrification, right? So if you look nationally, we have 67, it's gone down now since the Great Recession, about 64, 65% home ownership, Professor, in this country. New York City is the inverse.
Sure.
So we have 35% home ownership, 65% renter. So if you go in any neighborhood across America and you say, my neighborhood values have increased, everybody's happy applauding. Whoa. Well, I can send my kids to college, I could borrow against it. In New York City, you have mostly renters. So the rising tide doesn't lift all boats because the people in renting get nervous, have to pay more in rent. The people who own are happy, right? And Colvin Granham, I heard this yesterday from someone, said that Colvin Granham, head of Best-Eye Restoration, the oldest CDC in the country, and they do great work in Bedford-Stuyvesant. He said, it depends who you talk to in Bed-Stuy. The brownstone owners love it, the renters hate it. So New York is a unique. I
think the renters are more common than the brownstone owners, though, right?
Right, because 65% of New Yorkers are rent. And so that's the issue.
But people fear displacement because they've seen it, right?
Well, that's right.
In Williamsburg, in Bed-Stuy.
People fear displacement because they should fear displacement, right? Because you don't want to lose your home, you don't lose your neighborhood. Even if you can move to another neighborhood that's affordable, you have that friend.
But it's a rational fear.
It's a rational fear.
It's based on reality.
But what if someone said, we will fix displacement. You will not be displaced, but let us build higher. You can do that. That can be a rational trade. Take NYCHA. NYCHA has how much square footage of undevelopable land? I'm a developer. I look at these things, 350 million square feet. You could solve the affordability crisis just building on NYCHA. Not market rate. You build middle, you build low, you build, and you said whoever lives there is not displaced. Would people then go for building on NYCHA land? I mean, the mayor's trying with this next gen, it's great, it's 10,000 units. But ultimately, if you look at the buildable square footage, you can build 400,000. You could build for the next 40 years and not get it done, just on NYCHA land. So I'm saying, where is the credible plan? Not from the mayor. The mayor's trying. He's limited by the political environment. But the advocates to sit around the table, and I can build all affordable if I get the subsidy.
Right.
But I'm saying you can't get that subsidy. It's not practical from a mathematical perspective and a financial perspective. How can you build sustainable housing for every income strata? And my family have every income strata, and people are stressed. And they go, oh, I should have bought that house 15, 20 years ago when I told them to. Nobody wanted to do it. I couldn't give away condos in Fort Greene in 2000, 2001. Bank 120,000, which mortgage would be less than 1,000. People didn't want to buy because you had ample supply of rentable stock, right? You have more people moving into New York City. So New York City basically had white flight, to be honest, white flight in the 60s, after the riot, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So you went from 8 million to 7 million people. Now you're going to 8 to 9 million. It's just math, right? So people would rather live on the Gold Coast of Brooklyn and Manhattan. They have to move to Bed-Stuy because there's less housing stock. And Manhattan has become a place for this uber rich people. So if you make $400,000, you can't afford Manhattan. So you move to, Harlem is Manhattan, but you move to northern Manhattan, you move to Brooklyn, and then you force those people moving east.
You just keep
so we've seen it. So we've seen it. So, Fort Greene, when I went to Brooklyn Tech, Fort Greene basically had $60,000 brownstones. Now they're $3 million, and that's moving Crown Heights. That's moving sort of east and southward now because of those pressures in Manhattan. And Manhattan has a lot of vacant condos owned by foreigners who just use it as an asset base.
I want to go to a question. You've also talked about that that you're very interested in the mayor's idea of running a new subway line down Utica Avenue to one of the most underserved transit areas in Brooklyn, and the development opportunities that would provide for affordable housing.
Yeah, Utica, Pennsylvania, someone's from East New York, Pennsylvania Avenue. You know, you get trapped away from subway lines. So if you extend the transportation network, and then you could create, you know, as you said, you can create units with zoning and with, you know, tax abatements, which we don't have now, right?
No.
So that makes it worse.
Right.
So the 421A tax, which is political,
which is presupposed by the mayor's plan.
Right, right. So
right.
There's no tax abatement, right? The density is limited, right? Because a lot of neighborhoods, you can't go higher than 10 stories, you can't go higher than 6 stories, you can't go higher than this landmark. So you're limited. So if there was a moratorium on building, right? No gentrification, right? I contend you have more because you can't build. So you have more demand and supply is not keeping up with demand. So if you didn't build, you would accelerate gentrification.
Let me take a question. Tell us your name and your campus, please.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I attend John Jay College of Criminal Justice. My question is, will the 428A plan be revived in New York?
Will the 421A plan
Be revived in New York.
will it be revived? I mean,
So I guess none of us are experts on the politics
this is
of Albany.
something that takes place in Albany.
Yeah.
But one of the key debates in the 421A is the use of union labor, prevailing wage construction. As I understand it, if you develop with union construction, it could be $300 or $400 a square foot. If you have a choice of, you know, subcontracting out to union or non-union, it could lower the cost of construction to below $300 a square foot, $260 a square foot. This ardently pro-union mayor has basically made another compromise in saying that by not requiring the use of union labor. And that's been part of the whole 421A debate.
So, I mean, I think the conventional wisdom seems to be that 421A is an essential element of affordable housing development, or that's what I've heard from affordable housing developers. But the governor has said that he's intent on seeing the tax abatement renewed or a new one created, but it's been contingent upon an agreement between the real estate industry and the building trades, and I can tell you there's implacable hostility between both sides. So I'm pessimistic about the prospects for 218.
Yeah, but
It's
you know,
also
it depends how they look. It depends how they structure it. There's, you know, you can do 421A in the boroughs, and if you impose union labor in the boroughs, you're not going to be able to do the project because you're constrained by your rents, and so
Right, you can't do it.
You can't do it.
You can't do it.
But there are many 421A developers who do 80/20s, and I will
80
tell
market,
you,
20
right,
affordable.
But all of those, pretty much in time immemorial, have been union jobs. Those Manhattan jobs are union jobs.
But now you're going to 75-25.
But the point is, in terms of compromise, the union, in terms of compromise, if you can develop a compromise with the unions that says in areas where the rents can support, because you have very high rents, where it could support the incremental cost of union labor, then you should do union labor. But in the boroughs where the rents can't support that, then they should make a compromise that says these areas at this point in time can't support that extra cost, and so therefore these projects should be exempt from union labor.
Unions often do project labor agreements precisely to support affordable housing.
But they don't give enough.
Their members, and their members often do. Now,
project labor agreement, we talked to them and we said we'll build union. The issue is that you have a project labor agreement, you can't get the subs to abide by it because they have 100% employment now, right? Who's going to take that pay cut? So there's structure issues with that as well. I predict you'll have a tax abatement because what's happening now? The unions, it was a tough, sort of negotiation, and it broke down, and we have no 421A. But what's happening? If you're going to build and you can't build rental, you're going to build what?
For condo. It's going to skew toward
you can build a market. So the unions are anyway. People keep building, so they're going to come back to the table. And I think you'll have some compromise, as Felice said. And I think it'll happen probably this year.
But they have to fix it also to make it more efficient. There's a lot of the 421A that doesn't.
Someone will come up with an abatement.
That's a historical argument about the efficiency of tax abatement in terms of an alternative housing subsidy. But the point is, we've had, almost 40 years of 421A, okay?
It's a good thing.
Right, the least.
Right.
Because I was at HPD in 1979, we had 421A. So 21 and 16 is 37, right? 37 years of it. And there's been the same criticisms for 37 years.
And
Right.
so, but maybe
it-
they're not also. I mean, if you're making the same criticism for 37 years, you're either at least partly right, or you're just a crank. Now, you know, it could be.
You need a
could be one or the
compromise.
other, but you know, it's.
But it was never about union labor. For
No, that was
never
never.
the
That was
issue.
never the
because,
issue.
Because
That
the
was
unions
never the
didn't
issue.
want it. It had enough work. What's
Right,
happening
that wasn't
is
the issue.
the market rate developers are building open shop now, and they're not going back because you can get the same quality.
Open shop means you
You have
subcontract
some
out
union,
to
some
the-
non-union.
Some
You don't
direct,
have all union, and it's not going back. You can't tell someone that you can build for $500 a foot, or you can build from $300 a foot and still get the same product. Why would anyone here pay $500 for something and get for $300? It doesn't work.
But you know, I will say this:
It
the
doesn't work.
issue on 421A, there's an underlying political struggle between the governor and the mayor. Okay,
there is.
because for many years there's been an argument that the city's capital funds should use union labor, and there have been bills in Albany many times requiring the city to use union labor or prevailing wage where a project has city capital funds. If you do a federal project, you have to use prevailing wage.
Right.
And each time, because of the need for affordable housing, that legislation has never made it to the floor. So the issue is, it's a very similar issue. On city capital funds, it's capital subsidy, and there's no dispute in Albany that that can't be done because it impacts affordable housing.
Right.
On 421A, it's in the middle of a struggle, so it speaks to maybe there's an additional struggle separate and apart from that issue. right?
Let's be
And-
clear.
yeah.
I use union labor, right? Not all the time, but all my jobs have some union labor. In Philadelphia, we build 100% union. We're looking in New Jersey, Newark, 100% union. You know what the wages are? Not the wages, the total hard cost. $250. I know people building for $240, $250, $280, a high rise.
Per-
New York City,
per
square foot. $600, $500 here in New York City. Different wage rates, different rules here, different cost in New York City.
And so, I mean, and
so,
that- and
so
that's
is
what
it practical?
factors into the-
Is it practical? And I sat down to unions and I said, look, I will bill union if you own the building. I get my fee. I would do what I normally do, but I can't make it work for my investors. Use your pension funds. And they looked at it and said it doesn't work. We can't do it. So it's not like, someone doesn't want to do it. It just doesn't work for low income and middle income and affordable housing.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening. My name is Abiola Atta, and I'm from City College. My question is, are there any programs for people who are dependent on housing that could eventually help them to not be on government subsidies for housing? For example, education and employment?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I mean, you're asking are there programs that
Right.
try to take people out of subsidized housing into market rate housing?
No. So basically, people are dependent on government subsidies for housing. So
Right.
I want to know if there are programs that could help them eventually get out of government housing.
Yes.
Well, the point of investments in public education and higher education and workforce development is aimed at lifting people up the economic ladder. But I would even acknowledge, as a member of government, that government tends to be more effective at preventing misery and destitution than promoting upward mobility.
But there are developments that are tied to self-sufficiency programs. You mentioned before the not-for-profits. A lot of the housing that was developed by not-for-profits, in addition to the housing, they provide not only social services, but they provide educational services, computer classes, a whole host of services, particularly the units that are developed by Enterprise and LISC, which is which provide the low-income tax credit. Again, we go back to the issue, we have a problem of scale, and while it may basically provide them with self-sufficiency, then they become self-sufficient, but they've got to go out to the market and then find a non-subsidized unit. So it's a little bit of a catch-22, but there are programs that promote self-sufficiency.
And they're not but a lot of these programs aren't likely to lift people's incomes so much if they're very poor and they need a lot of housing subsidy, even being quite a bit better off, but still poor.
But also,
they're still going to need housing
But
subsidy,
I don't know
maybe
if you saw
less.
the study. There was a longitudinal study done that showed if you take a low-income person out of a predominantly low-income neighborhood and put them in a middle or upper neighborhood, you have better long-term outcomes, right? So that would actually turn gentrification on its head,
Well, but
because you have right. So you need more development. You need more resources. I contend that we have an adverse selection issue in New York, right? So you have communities that we grew up in, difficult to get a summer job. You don't have that social capital, right? As I went to college, a buddy calls you, I have a job opening here. I have this, I have that. You have a lot of communities where you don't have that. So we need to do something. Like, a lot of our resources go to people who don't need it. So beyond housing, what we're doing is we're creating economic engines. A lot of our developments, we have job incubators and business incubators. We teach people how to create their own business, how to create for themselves, because that's how you raise people, through education. And everyone's not going to go to college, but they can make money opening up a store or learning a trade or being a site safety manager. So I think there are other things you can do besides rely on government.
I want to get, but that longitudinal study is, speaks to the importance of not only racial integration in schools in particular, but economic integration in schools.
Partly the purpose of MIH.
Right, of matching schools and bringing people together. Frankly, that was what the New York City Housing Authority did. Right. When, it kind of threw everybody in together, at least in those developments that were integrated.
Initially, because it wasn't developed as low. The whole issue of public housing was developed for working families initially. It were people returning from the war, and they had no place to live. And so public housing was created. So initially, public housing was for a working population. And then over time, because of the need for lower income housing and the rise in homelessness, those kinds of issues changed. Then as the working families became more upwardly mobile, they either moved to a home in the city or they moved outside. But the model, that initial model, was also a mixed income model.
But also, I want to go to the last question. Of course, public housing was also designed to be transitional housing. You moved into a housing project, you started to make it, and you moved on out. And as you made the point, is people don't leave public housing anymore.
Anymore.
Right.
People can't, and we also have very different patterns of upward mobility than we did in the 1940s, 1950s.
Right. I want to get another question in, please.
Yeah. Hello. My name is Raymond Akwe from Bronx Community College, and my question is, I'm right now compiling data for violations and reports in Harlem. My question is that, what is the government doing about building affordable housing and yet acceptable to average American?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Repeat it, please.
Yeah. What's the government doing about building affordable housing and making it acceptable for average American?
I mean, we have a vested interest not only in affordability, but also quality. So here in New York City, I would argue we have one of the best systems of code enforcement. And if you have a condition in your apartment, you can call 311. HPD will send an inspector. We have armies of inspectors. And we're pretty effective. We have a range of programs at improving the habitability of our housing stock. So.
Right. We do have a great number of them. I think if they were expanded, if they were expanded, it would actually help with housing preservation as well.
I agree.
Yes, ma'am. I want to try to get one last question in.
Hi, my name is Natisha Mitchell. I go to John Jay College of Criminal Justice. My question is, will Governor Cuomo really allow Mayor de Blasio to have success in the creation of affordable housing?
Well, this is kind of, we have about 3 minutes. Let's have some fun and talk politics.
I think there are 3 senses in which the governor has politicized affordable housing to a level we've never seen. First, there's no New York agreement for supportive housing, which is the most expensive to build because it's affordable housing integrated with social services. Second, politicization of 421A. And third, he's politicizing bond financing. So under the governor's budget, the Empire State Development Authority, which is controlled by the governor, would determine the city's allocation of bond financing. And then every bond transaction, which could be decided by the city, would be subject to state approval. So the whole process has been politicized.
Well, I mean, this is not only in everything from control of CUNY to control of the MTA. I mean,
the mayor might be more popular than CUNY to the governor.
But I mean, when you look at the 421A, the failure to renew 421A, you essentially had they've kind of subcontracted this whole issue out to the Real Estate Board of New York and the Building Trades Council and said, you work it out. You know, I don't quite understand why the legislature can't say this is what we want to see
It's their job.
happen,
Yeah.
because it is their job. So
It's all been.
Well, I don't think they want to offend either group.
Right, right. You know, I think ultimately, believe it or not, there's sort of a silver lining in these clouds of despair, because more people are paying attention to this. 421A. I get my kids ask me, Daddy, what's all this MIH? You know, they think it's some Secret Service, right? Because everyone's talking about it. But if you know, anyway, that's a British issue. But
that's MI6.
Right, MI6.
MI6.
That's it. That was a play on.
We should rename it MI6.
on James Bond. But you have people paying attention. And I contend that you will have more support. And we work well with, in the sandbox with the governor and the mayor. I have to say that because I'm a developer, right? I get support from both. And I think what you're going to have is you're going to have a coming together of like minds, and you're going to get more support for homelessness, for supportive housing, and for just, housing in general, because people are paying attention.
That's the irony, is that you actually might have, out of the cycle drama between the mayor and the governor, might come 2 housing plans and even greater investment in supportive housing.
Well,
that could be an unpredictable.
That's the kind of competition I'd like to see.
Yeah, are you optimistic at all about that? Because I'm a little. I'm not particularly, and I worry. I also worry that that we're not necessarily keeping an eye on making sure that this really does stay permanently affordable. Right. Over the long term.
No, it's going to happen. Take Jamaica. You're involved in that deal. So we have inclusionary housing, so permanent affordability for a lot of these units, right? Beyond that, 33% low income, 33% middle, 30% mod, all affordable, right? And we have state and the city playing in the same sandbox in my deal. It's happening. Right. I'm not the great peacemaker. It's just happening. Right. People politicize things, and it's good to say there's a feud, but people are working together, and I believe in the city. I'm bullish on the city and the state.
Well, I think that we only have a little bit of time left. If you can take that commitment and direct it, maybe we'll make progress. I'm running over. I always make deadline. Thank you all. We'll see you next time on the CUNY Forum.
Thanks.